to use in Ukraine, according to the National Security Council's John Kirby. He says those weapons include a significant number of artillery shells being funneled through countries in the Middle East and North Africa to hide their ultimate final destination. It's just one of the pieces of news this afternoon coming out about North Korea, which fired off a record 23 ballistic missiles today. NBC's Courtney.
Let's listen to this. I missed part of it. Sorry about that. Here we go.
For good, but only if we do it right.
From Devil's Breath, Sunday, November 13th at 10 on MSNBC, part of the Turning Point documentary series.
New from the White House today, North Korea is secretly supplying weapons to Russia to use in Ukraine, according to the National Security Council's John Kirby. He says those weapons include a significant number of artillery shells being funneled through countries in the Middle East and North Africa to hide their ultimate final destination. It's just one of the pieces of news this afternoon coming out about North Korea, which fired off a record 23 ballistic missiles today. NBC's Courtney Kube is live for us at the Pentagon. So, Court, talk through the Pentagon response, what we're hearing from the White House on these, this pair, I think you could say, of big headlines.
Yeah, that's right. So on the launches, the North Korea launches, the U.S. officials who we're speaking with here are saying this is most likely a direct response to the ongoing U.S.-South Korea air exercises that are taking place right now. This is an enormous exercise, historically large, in fact, with hundreds of sorties and aircraft in the air. North Korea threatened that they were going to respond. The U.S. was expecting that it could look something like this with ballistic missile launches that we're seeing right now. The key here, though, Hallie, is the number of launches. It is much larger than the officials I've been speaking with were expecting. 23 missiles and about 100 artillery rounds. The U.S. and South Korea are continuing their exercise. They're continuing to fly as part of this. And that is what we expect to be sort of the U.S. part of any response to this. But we should expect the ongoing tensions and back and forth to likely continue as the exercise continues. On the other issue that you mentioned, this other headline that's coming out of the region right now, John Kirby at the White House, the National Security Council, said that the U.S. now believes that North Korea may be preparing to send some artillery shells to Russia for use in Ukraine. Now, what's important here are two things. Number one, they have no evidence that any of these artillery shells have actually made their way to Russia or to Ukraine. Also, they believe that North Korea is intentionally running these shells, this artillery, through other countries as a way to obscure its transfer from North Korea directly into Russia. So what we're going to continue asking here at the Pentagon, and I'm sure across Washington, is there evidence that they're making their way into the hands of the Russians to be used in Ukraine on the battlefield? Artillery has been a critical weapon, of critical use inside Ukraine. It will only continue to be used in the coming months ahead as this conflict continues. But John Kirby did make a point of saying that even with this, even if it ends up being hundreds or even thousands of artillery shells that make their way there, the U.S. at this point does not expect it to be some decisive moment in the conflict there, Hallie.
Courtney Kube, lots to watch there at the Pentagon today. Court, thank you. Good to see you. Some new details now out west on the attack on Nancy Pelosi's husband, with NBC News confirming Capitol Police had a camera feed of the Pelosi's home in San Francisco, including one that was up, apparently running as the attack was happening, but nobody was monitoring it at the time, according to a couple of sources familiar with the situation. Why not? Well, one, the House Speaker wasn't there. One source telling NBC News she is the mission, right? She is the mission. The camera's also one of about 1,800 at the Capitol around the country, the Capitol Police monitor. I want to bring in NBC's Aaron McLaughlin, who's got more from San Francisco. And Aaron, the argument, it seems, I think, from one end of this is there's a lot of cameras in a lot of places around the country. Speaker Pelosi was not even at the House, so the expectation should not be that it would be monitored 24/7. Talk us through what we're hearing, the latest in this investigation, and then what's next for the suspect.
Yeah, that's right, Hallie. At the same time, Capitol Hill Police acknowledging that they need more resources given, in their words, the political climate of the situation. Now, meanwhile, we're getting more information about the attack itself, according to court documents filed by the prosecution when 42-year-old David DePape broke into the Pelosi home behind me, wielding a hammer, waking up Paul Pelosi managing to call 911 in the presence of David DePape. The 911 dispatcher had a conversation with DePape, according to these court documents. DePape identifying himself as David, saying that he was a family friend of the Pelosi's, something that Paul Pelosi disputed to the dispatcher. The conversation was strange enough for the dispatcher to then elevate the priority to that call. Minutes later, the police arriving. According to the court documents, when they arrived, DePape told them that he was on a, quote, suicide mission, saying, according to the documents, quote, I didn't really want to hurt him, but you know this was a suicide mission. I'm not going to stand here and do nothing, even if it costs me my life. Now, he also went on in the presence of police to name other individuals, high-profile federal and local government officials, as well as a university professor, as individuals he could want to target. And this is all part of the prosecution's case that will be laid out before a judge on Friday.
To me, by I'm not taking care of him too as well, the Speaker of the House, her husband, to me, it would be the same thing if you was to put security in a bank and
right into the ground. That's what people.
and you only wanted to secure the front door and you wasn't secure about the back. You can't go into these things half measured, people that is in the eyes of the public like this all the time. And the thing about it is, this guy now, not this guy, but the guy that broke in the house, even if he was to get 20 years, which I doubt, because there is, whenever it's all said and done with, he didn't hit an official, number one, and number two, I'm pretty sure this individual's going to get over it. So basically, it's going to be like a standard assault with the intent towards wanting to do bodily harm, which I don't think that's going to be no life sentence. But the thing about it is, what this individual has done, because of the type of person that he attacked, he's going to have basically all kinds of book sales. There ain't no telling, he'll probably become rich after all this. Because once more, it got on Limelight TV, national TV, and usually whenever that does, whenever you see their face and you see their name, usually that automatically opens up a brand new avenue, to the degree that a lot of these people make a lot of money even though they're sitting in jail, typing up their story of how they felt and why they felt that way and what motivated them to do what they done. That's the reason why Hollywood doesn't just take care of a few people in Hollywood. If you move to Hollywood, odds are you're going to be protected from A to Z. It don't matter if you're in the front door or the back door. If you're in that environment where everybody and their brother knows your name, they're going to protect you, because there are celebrity hounds out there that would just about do anything to gain recognition for themselves, especially somebody that has fought, dug, sweat, bled, whatever, to get to their position that they're in. And most of the time, it does require a great deal of time and interest, possibly money, hours, endless hours of doing whatever you're doing. It doesn't matter if you're a singer, entertainer, or a Hollywood movie star or a politician. And then all of a sudden, here comes somebody within a matter of just a few seconds or a couple minutes that wants to join you in that limelight. They're basically stealing. They're panhandling. And they're panhandling on people they know that if they was to ever do like this guy done towards getting lucky and getting in the house and actually putting a wallop on the Speaker of the House's head or whatever that he done. I don't know what all he done. They act like I guess he's going to heal up from it, which that's good. But anybody like that becomes an automatic target. And to me, it would be the same if you wanted to protect the front of the bank, but you wasn't concerned about the back of the bank. Because you know anybody associated with that bank, if somebody sticks a gun to their face, to their head, they're going to automatically open up every drawer that they can towards getting every penny that they can give to that person, whoever's trying to hold them up. It don't matter if they come in the front door, back door, or the side door. A lot of times people capture people like this. They'll use a whole party to capture them. And then once they capture them, they'll hold them hostage. Now, today, you can still do that. But now you can do it towards threatening a whole city or a country, that you're going to go in and wipe out their whole grid system pertaining to hacking into their main city account or town account or whatever. And a lot of times it's easier to pay off the ransom than it is to rework and regroup and put in all brand new system that now has done a total meltdown. I think New Orleans is running into that now 2 or 3 different times where they've been hacked and they basically all ask for a ransom, kind of like kidnapping somebody. And a lot of times these people do it and get away with it because they know how to go about doing things like that. Going through the back door where it can't be traced, taking the money and transferring it over to a certain account. And as soon as that money gets to that account, it goes to another account and it'll bounce around to 4 or 5 different accounts because you've already got your players in line towards basically laundering your money, your digital money, to the point that once it gets out there and it goes from this country to that country to this bank to that bank, you can't keep up with it. It's basically untraceable. Because America don't have access to all the banks. America don't have access to all the countries. There's a lot of countries out there that don't want to have nothing to do with America. So you take like a country like, I think it's Felice over in South America or somewhere over in that area. They basically don't abide by none of our laws. If you're a criminal and you decide to go over there and hide out, by law, they don't have to cooperate with our law. They're not in the same loop. It's just bad that the security cameras was on the house and on the members of the house. But I guess whenever they figured out that Nancy Pelosi was no longer going to be there, somebody must have flipped a switch, even though the recorders was going. But the guy that was in the house, he was probably thinking to himself, well, they're seeing this on camera. They're witnessing this. It's just a matter of a couple minutes before somebody's going to show up. And the whole time while he was hoping for that, they had the switch turned off because Nancy Pelosi wasn't in the house. How ignorant is that? Knowing good and well that the person that is directly associated with that person, that they could be kidnapped or held hostage or somebody take a dive towards wanting to hit them. Like I said, The person now, his face and his name has been all over national news, which makes him basically a world entity. And once you become a world entity, there'll be somebody out there that will track you down towards wanting to know who you are and what's your story about. And then you sell your story. And once you sell your story, then you become that much more famouser. And the next thing you know, you become rich off of piggybacking off of somebody else's celebrityism. They piggyback off of somebody else's celebrityism, just like the guy that shot one of the Beatles. He immediately become wealthy. Just like the guy that shot Ronald Reagan. Hinckley. I don't know if they allowed for him to do that. I think sometimes in cases like that, it's based upon an agreement with the judge or the prosecuting attorney that you cannot do that while you're locked up. Now, after you're not locked up, then you can type up all the stuff you want pertaining to the Freedom of Speech Act. But during the time that you're locked up, I think what they actually do, they'll hit them up with an extra 3 to 5 years and say, well, if this is what you want to do, you can apply another 3 to 5 years onto your time. But now we're telling you now, if you don't do it, because we're requesting for you not to do it, then instead of your time being this amount, it's going to be this amount. So the prosecutors actually use that for a prying tool to try to get people to shut up. That way they're not making money off of piggybacking off of other people's celebrityism. But I guarantee you, as much as his face and his name has been broadcasted, because once that goes digital out there, you're not going to be able to erase it. It'll bounce from satellite to satellite to satellite, and 25 years from now, you'll be able to see the guy's name and his face come up again, even if he decided not to write a book, even if he decided not to publish his story and make money off of this. You still liable to see this guy that I'm talking about that attacked the Speaker of the House, Nancy Pelosi's husband, 25 years from now, automatically coming up. You liable to be going through your Facebook or going through some other kind of different social media platform, and all of a sudden, boom, bam, there that guy is. Hey, I remember that guy. Celebrity hounds. And if the truth be known, he probably had never committed any type of violent act like that. And that's probably what was motivating him towards him doing what he was doing. I just can't see somebody breaking somebody's legs because they're not going to cooperate with you towards being that vicious and that unsettling towards wanting to be that cruel to somebody if they don't cooperate with you. I think he was just using that for an excuse, personally, and his whole primary objective was to try to get rich off of piggybacking off of somebody else's celebrityism. And like I said, it's really stupid that security would do something like that, especially somebody on that high up on the totem pole. You know, even a state senator pertaining to the state government should have some sort of a system set up through either cameras or maybe a little red button that they can mash, kind of like the bank. You know, the bank don't have to necessarily pick up a telephone. All they got to do is mash one little button. If they can get to that button and mash that button, I guarantee you the cavalry's going to come. Well, you take these state senators and these various people working for the government, I'm pretty sure that they get into some very, very uncomfortable positions from time to time, regardless whether it's a town hall meeting or going back up to the state government and working for the people or whatever. So they got to have some sort of security measure set up. The point that I'm trying to make is this. This guy was failed by the system because he thought that the proper security measures had been set up, and if the truth be known, he was probably thinking just any given minute that the cavalry is going to come Calvary didn't come. If he wasn't fortunate enough to get on that telephone and call 911, who knows? The guy could have actually went bizarre to the degree of killing Nancy Pelosi's husband and burying his body in the yard somewhere, and never no one detecting on what happened and what happened to that guy for years later. That's stupid. Especially somebody uppity up on that high of a totem pole. Especially since everything has been going on since January the 6th. That was absolutely carelessness and gross negligence upon the security team that takes care of these type of problems. And I don't know if it's Homeland Security. I don't know if it's private security. I don't know if it's some independent subcontractor that's doing that. I don't know who was involved in it, but I guarantee you there's going to be some questions asked about it. And if it was me and I was married to somebody like that and I just got through taking a wallop on the head, I'd be wanting some answers too.
That's what people are talking about. I'm not.
Nobody wants to get hurt. Nobody wants to get inflicted with violence and pain. And that's what almost happened out here at 291 Thompson Road. And it would have had if I didn't have enough wits about me to restrain myself, because if it had been anybody else, if it would have been my father, James Robert Jackson, somebody would have wound up probably going to the morgue, and somebody would have wound up probably going to jail because of all the turmoil and all the hideousness that was going on out here by being stalked and tormented, literally tormented for 3 solid consecutive years during a time that all hell busted loose in my brother's life and my life simply because of me coming back to my inheritance. And to think that the judicial system in Weakley County allowed for that and let that go on, and they think that they're not going to give an account for that one day in the hereafter world? Huh. Good luck to you, bud. That's all I got to say. All the sheriffs, all the deputies, all those that was associated with this little event out here, good luck to you is all I got to say. Just like all the preachers
Thing that I read.
and all the churches, be putting out the message that I've been putting out to society, and none of them was willing to pick up a finger towards supporting me and basically put me out on a limb to hang me out to dry. You don't think that those people's going to be held accountable? You don't think that God's going to ask them people one day, regardless whether it be the Neal family over in Kenton, Tennessee, or the Damian Cross family, or the Randy Brundridge family over in Martin, Tennessee, that's the mayor, or some of these other churches that showed their ugliness the way that they have? You don't think that they're going to have to give an account for these things? You don't think that Tommy Moore and Judge Pence and the prosecuting attorney and all these other people that I've had scrapes with, either in Kentucky or Oklahoma, you don't think that those people is going to have to give account for this stuff? And maybe they don't care. Maybe they've done sold their souls to the devil to the degree that they don't have no conscience and they don't have no fear of the hereafter. Well, that's fine too. But I guarantee you, before it's all said and done with, the Bible says that we will be accountable for every word, including myself, including me. And if I have went out of my way to deserve any of this that I have went through for the past 30 some odd years since I'm going to use the word infliction, has fell up onto my life since basically 1983, whenever I made a telephone call to the White House about the Antichrist. It has been the same thing as polio, cancer. Just like my brother said, Juby, we're the next thing to being Holocaust survivors. And David was basing his remorse off of that in which what he had suffered in the community by the community letting all of us down, by nobody willing to stand up against my biological father that was basically a madman at one time. And it wasn't just one time. We're talking about thousands of times that he would go off the deep end and fly off the handle. And these people knew it. And they sat back and allowed it and watched it. And if the truth be known, probably the biggest majority of them was entertained by it. Probably some of them actually went as far as saying, my God, why didn't he beat him a little bit longer? Why didn't he hit him harder? You don't think that these people that didn't do what they were supposed to have done as the Good Samaritan, you don't think that they're going to be held accountable for not doing the proper and right thing? Sure they will. Sure they will. That's the reason why the Good Samaritan done what the Good Samaritan done. He done it because he wanted to help the person, and he also done it because he didn't want one day for it to be thrown up in his face towards God judging him and asking him, well, how come you didn't help that guy whenever you come across him and you know that he was almost at the point of death? I'm telling you, obviously there's no sense of consciousness in this country anymore pertaining to the fear of God by people thinking that they're going to be able to sit idly by and not have to give an account for the things that they have allowed to occur, that they could have raised at least a red flag towards or picked up the telephone and called somebody. You know, if you're afraid somebody's going to come after you or knock you in the head, that's why we got the police for. At least call somebody that's supposed to have enough nerve to come out here and tend to the problem if you don't have enough gumption about yourself to tend to the problem. It is awful over here. Absolutely awful the way that people has basically turned their backs on other people towards saving their own hides. And that begins with Cheryl White and Ed White, because I went to school with Cynthia White. I don't know where she wound up getting married and going off to. I think, if I'm not mistaken, she's down in Florida somewhere. But for surely she comes and visits her own dad and her mother from time to time, because I've heard Ed White make mention that he regrets that she had moved off the way that she moved off, because she's had children and now they don't have no close contact with the grandchildren. Well, maybe they should have thought about that before they started leaving these images towards what kind of people that they are, in regards towards not even having the gumption of picking up the telephone, knowing that a whole family was being torn to pieces right beside of them or in behind of them, while my brother was helping him milk about 150, 200 cows. Maybe that's the reason why that she decided, you know what, I'm just going to get married. I'm just going to move off. The hell with mom and dad, because I've seen what kind of people that they are towards allowing for this family or that family that wound up getting damaged or hurt, and they never raised a finger to it. I'm just saying, maybe it's always that possibility, because Cynthia was always a very, very warm-hearted person whenever I was going to school with her. Naturally, our lives changed. She went her way, I went my way. But I guarantee you, she knows as much about our lives as the Willises or the Bakers or the Sweats or the Morgans or the Jacobses or the Nelsons or the Hills or the Halls. The Freemans, the Hazelwoods, the Feeneys, you know, one of the things that really bothered me, I don't think I've ever mentioned this in any of my material, is that whenever I come back, one of the first people that I was led of the Lord towards trying to look up was Billy Wally. Billy Wally had a pretty big family. Their mother's name was Tiny Sue, that used to go to the Assembly of God Church up here. Tiny Sue was involved with that church during the time that Jolene Land stood to her feet and made witness about this individual that had these remarkable powers that could bring down the flying objects, that could bring fire out of heaven and burn logs, and that could raise the dead. There was a whole group of people in that church that witnessed this particular testimony, including myself. And Billy Wally was one of them that wound up marrying the Feeney girl, kin, I think, to the Hayeses. Everybody around here knows everybody. It ain't no secret towards what went on and what shouldn't have went on, and those that could have stopped it from going on but chose not to, including the Thompsons, including the Lesters. There ain't no secret in what's went on here. The Cobles. I could go on and on and on with names probably for the next hour. Either people in Sharon, Tennessee, or people in Kenton, Tennessee, or people in Greenfield, Tennessee, or people in Martin, Tennessee. Basically, the surrounding 2 counties. I could go down a big, long list of mentioning their names because they was associated with my family in some sort of way, including the Sheffields, including the Ridgeways. Oh, yeah. Oh, no doubt. I could go down a long list of the people that was familiar with my family. And to think that I had to come back in 2014 and see how the judicial system in Weakley County basically throwed my family to the dogs. And, you know, I've made mention of this before. That's one of the reasons why that I felt like my son Nicholas would have been better off being raised down in Memphis, Tennessee, even though his mother had married some foreigners, versus being raised up into this area, because I knew the background of these people. They had done already proven themselves to me towards what kind of people that they was. Getting back to Ed White and his daughter, Cynthia. I've heard him say before, well, I wish that she never would have moved off. Well, maybe some of the things that Ed White done or Cheryl White done must have didn't set well with her or something, to the degree that she didn't want no part of this neighborhood. And maybe that was it. Maybe she took a liking to the whole neighborhood versus her own mom and dad, and she was willing to sacrifice her own life by getting away from her mom and dad, even at the expense of her children not having to do nothing with the grandparents, because of everything that went on down here that she knowed it wasn't right. She knowed it wasn't right, and it still went on anyway. The Cobles, almost all them girls right down the road here, you can't tell me that they didn't know that my father was a loose cannon. Jimmy Jackson's another one. The Dawsons, that's another family. The Hayeses, the Harrisons, the Hazelwoods. I mean, I could go on and on and on with names. The Robinsons. I could go up there in Kenton and pick out probably 10 or 12, 15 families, including the Capses, Don Caps. You can't tell me that he wasn't in tune towards what was going on around here with various families that was being abused. Either their fathers was alcoholics or they was just abusers and wanted to beat up on their children. You wonder how come that the Night Riders ever become in play down here by Reelfoot Lake. Well, that's why. It's because for some reason there was a bunch of low-life, no good for nothing, worthless people around here that basically either didn't work or raped and villaged their own family or beat up on their family or abused their family either verbally or emotionally or physically. That's the reason why the primary concern for the Night Riders ever got involved to begin with. The way that I understand it. Now, they took it a bit too far in the things that they was doing towards turning it into a vigilante type lawlessness law, if you want to call it a law. I don't call it a law. People that do some of the stuff that they've done, that'd be like saying the KKK was the law. KKK was another bunch of vigilantes. far as I'm concerned, Nathan Bedrick Forrest was a bunch of vigilantes during the Civil War that took it way too far. It's one thing to go against the war of the Indian, but they was going against the war of the black man, and they planted that seed, and that seed to this day is still living and well in the South. Not just here in this community, but in the South in general. And if the truth be known, you could probably go to places in the North and still find where people was very, very prejudiced against other people. I've never seen nothing like it before. And to think that they let me down and let our family down, basically by saying, well, we don't care about old Bob's boys, and be entertained by the family being taken advantage of. The Simmonses. The Mackrights. The Wayne Scotts. Like I said, I could go on and on with names. The Ramseys. Some of the most wildest acting people. You know, whenever I come back here and I realized that they had established a wildlife refuge center here in this area, that was a good thing, right? That was a good thing. Take care of wildlife. Manage the wildlife. Don't take advantage of them to the point that you genocide them out. But man, who would have thought that the real wildlife out here would have been those pertaining to the baby boomers and those that now had got asphyxiated with drugs and alcohol both? And who would have thought that our law, our very law that's supposed to protect people, who would have thought that they would have turned out to have been nothing but a bunch of wildlife animals? Because whenever you're picking and choosing who you're protecting and who you're not protecting in the county, first of all, that's prejudicism. Second of all, that's dereliction of duty. My brother and I had just as much right to have been treated just as favorable as some of the richest farmers in this community are in this county, are some of the most predominant people that inherited whatever towards a bunch of land or money or whatever. We had just as much right to call upon the services towards us being American taxpayers as anybody else. The only way that I could have foreseen us not having that right would have been if we would have been illegals. And if, in other words, if I would have snuck over the Rio Grande and I didn't have proper paperwork, well then, because I don't have proper paperwork, the system shouldn't have the responsibility towards taking care of those people the way that they take care of their own American people. So if anybody was going to be prejudiced against anybody, it would be against the illegals. In other words, I'd drop the ball on the illegals once I found out that they come over here illegally. You know, if you're not going to load them up and send them back, at least let them know that what that they have done requires a punishment and a penalty. And part of that penalty and punishment, you can no longer take advantage of our system down here in America towards all our hospitals and lakes and all our courts and all our law enforcement agencies. They shouldn't have a right to do that. Why? Because they're over here illegal. They didn't come over here the way that other people has come over here towards signing a dotted line and raising their hand and swearing allegiance to our government, to our way of life over here. But I got treated like I was a wetback. My brother and I did. We got treated like we was illegals. We got treated like we was basically the dust off of Tommy Moore's feet. We got treated like we was hardcore criminals. And my brother didn't even have a criminal file. Did not have a criminal file at all. And all the things that's occurred to me has been because I've been set up. People has illegitimately brought these things into my life towards trying to ruin me. But now I guarantee you, people like the Morgans, people like the Harrisons, people like the Staggses, people like the Willises, they rather believe the worst about old Juby, the individual that's talking right now, that, oh yeah, we heard that he went into the White House and he had a sword and he was threatening to cut off George Walker H. Bush's life, threatening to cut off his head. They'd rather believe the worst out of somebody than they would the better. Even though it was Secret Service that made up the lie to begin with, like I was on my way to take out George Walker Bush's life like I was some sort of an assassin. I've heard the nannies up here in Sharon talk about it. I've heard the Robinsons talk about it. I've heard other families up there talking about it, shaming me, never giving me a chance to be able to say my piece of the story because of what the power that our government has towards being able to destroy people's lives. Shaming me. I'm talking about people that I went to school with, people that I've known all my life. No wonder they turned their backs on me. It all started with Homeland Security. We're going to attack this individual's character, and we're going to make sure that he never gains any type of credibility whatsoever. That way, he won't be able to fulfill his mission that he feels like that God has called him into. That way, we'll never see true peace or utopia pertaining to a revival here up into the land. And in the meantime, they're sitting back and they're letting their sons and their daughters and their grandsons and their daughters suffer on account of their decisions. You don't think that these people are going to be held accountable? They haven't just tried to ruin my life, but now they're trying to ruin their own. It's backfired on them. Literally backfired on them with all these drugs and with their daughters being asphyxiated with some rotten, no good for nothing, sorry human being that either won't work or that was on drugs, and now their grandkids has been born, and now they've got problems because the mother was seduced with drugs or the father was seduced with drugs. So it just goes on and on and on towards the misery of the bed that they have created for themselves. And I'm not saying everybody down here has done this, because there's been a few that just didn't even realize what was going on. And a lot of them people now are dead and gone, like the minister over there in the Church of God Church, Dennis, whatever his name is, that still to this day refuses to sit down with me and have a conversation about what went on with Miss Neal, towards the Neal family, towards her being the mayor of Kenton, as well as Miss Sheila over there that used to be the chief of police over there. These people have yet to sit down and make an offense or to get the record straight. They refuse to sit down with me. Matter of fact, I have people like the Davises, Dwayne Davis, that I was visiting at one time down toward Union City, on the other side of Union City. He comes at me, he's like, hey, Juby, we're probably going to have to pay a price for all this stuff, man. We're probably going to have to bed down together one day and take care of one another. But yet, no, I can't get Dwayne Davis to sit down and conduct a conversation with me pertaining to the past, of having a live testimony of various people that knowed what went on in my life during the time that it went on in my life. A matter of fact, Dwayne Davis went beyond just the beatings that was going on down here. He was one of the witnesses that was with me during the time that I went into Cheers nightclub and the foreigners pertaining to the Saudi Arabians tried to take my life that night. Him and Dayton Earl Penick. There's another name to be thrown out there. The Pennicks. Zorabelle Lovelace, that used to be a Penick, come to my hospital bed in 1983 and said, oh, Dennis, it's no doubt God saved your life. Now you just got to figure out what it was. Wound up dying and giving Union University over $1 million. Didn't offer to help me not one red cent. And Miss Bobby Sue in Nashville, Tennessee, would have helped me and was helping me if it wasn't nothing else, having just the comfort of conversation or offer me to sit down and have a meal every now and then. As soon as Homeland Security once more come into her house and started tapping around with her phones, she got whiff of what was going on, and the next thing you know, she backs plumb away from the relationship. That was another big no-no by the United States government that was intervening in something that they never should have been intervening with, pertaining to the relationship that I had with Miss Bobby Sue. And Miss Bobby Sue died of COVID, and God bless her soul. But I know good and well that all these people that I've come in contact with since 1983, especially since 1983, since I was basically 24 years old, they're going to have to give an account for the things that they either have not done that they should have done, or the things that they did do. Now, there is some people in Sharon, there is some people in Cydonia, and there is some people in Hop-In, or the Hop-In region going towards Reeves, and there is some people over in Kenton that still wants to act decent, that don't mind talking to me, that is willing to sit down and share a glass of tea with me, even at their own house. A matter of fact, last night I was over at a farmer's house. Him and his wife offered me a bowl of chili. I drank the drink and ate a bowl of chili. That was an excellent bowl of chili. So there are still decent people in the area. Not everybody is cold-hearted, and not everybody is a two-faced hypocrite. But I can sure go down a long list of the people that has been. Now, just because you have been, don't mean that you have to continue to be. But now I put out all this material throughout all these years, and you've had all this much time to reevaluate your decision about me, and apparently your decision must still be the same, because I ain't heard no apologies. Ain't nobody driven by my house and wanted to get friendly with me. Maybe one or two. I got a good neighbor down the road. I'm very fortunate to have him. That way I keep an eye on his stuff. He keeps an eye on my stuff. At least maybe I got that going for me in case I'm gone one day or one night visiting or over at the lake somewhere. Maybe he sees a car out here, somebody out here tinkering around here, give me a call and say, hey, Juby, there's some people out here doing a bunch of stuff out here at your yard. And I will say this about Derek Coble. His intentions was good during the time that I was locked up, because there was a whole group of people out here, a bunch of dopeheads, and I didn't realize that they was dopeheads. I just come into the area basically, didn't hardly know nobody, and he was good enough to at least come to me and say, well, Juby, are you sure that you gave them permission to be out there? Well, see, he knew these people. He knew their background. He knew their history. I didn't. I took it upon the faith of my son that had at one time a relationship with this particular person that allowed for all these people to come over here, that he was a good person. And he lied to me. He fed me a bunch of crap, in which I never gave him permission to bring half of the community, all his dope buddies down here. But at least Eric Coble did take the initiative towards trying to contact me about what was going on. I think he went about it in the wrong way, towards getting them to announce it over the loudspeaker about 2 or 3 o'clock at night. That woke everybody up that was talking about it. And then a few hours later, he comes popping into the door, coming down there at the jail cell, wanting to talk to me personally. I think that it could have been conducted in a different way, towards if he wanted to say something to me, for them to call me out and took me to the office. That way it didn't have to be broadcasted. That way I didn't have to look like that I was working for the Martin PD or the Weakley County PD, pretending to be somebody's snitch or something. But anyways, that's neither here nor there. That's over with. I tried to make it up with him by giving his daughter a dog, and I feel like that the dog has been a good contentment for her that she needed at the time. So one hand kind of helps wash the other. I never would have given the dog to Mr. Coble if I felt like that he was a horrible, horrible bad person. Because if you're a horrible, horrible bad person to people, odds are you're going to be a horrible, horrible bad person to animals. And I never would have given one of my animals to Derek Coble if I thought that that animal was going to be abused or taken advantage of in some sort of way.
That what happened on Friday could have been much worse if it were not for Pelosi's incredible courage in the moment. From that Times reporting, quote, the attacker told the police that he had other targets, a local professor and several prominent state and federal politicians. The attack on Paul Pelosi and what it reveals about the threat to American democracy is where we begin today. New York Times congressional reporter Luke Broadwater is back. Also joining us again, Frank Figliuzzi, former FBI Assistant Director for Counterintelligence, now an MSNBC national security analyst, and Miles Taylor is here, former Chief of Staff at the Department of Homeland Security and co-founder of the political party Forward. Luke, the Times is out with that great reporting that I read from, but as the investigation, enters its fifth full day, the facts make clear that all of the right-wing, to quote Bill Barr, BS is just that, BS. Talk about this very real investigation tracking with a really fervent stream of disinformation coming out of the right.
Right. So the challenge for Capitol Police and for San Francisco Police and anyone trying to keep lawmakers safe these days is what experts will tell you is called stochastic terrorism. And that is that there's been so much hatred planted among the American people, so many lies, so much bigotry spread around about specific groups of people, whether it's Nancy Pelosi, Democrats generally, Joe Biden, other people have been targeted in this mess of conspiracy and lies, that it's almost impossible to know where the next threat, the next attack will come from. And it's very hard to draw direct lines between a demonization of someone and the attack. But they know that it's just out there bubbling and increasing in this sort of chaos of hatred. And so it's very, very difficult for law enforcement officials to know exactly who's going to be at risk when and who the next attacker will be. But what they do know is that more needs to be done. There's a security review underway right now about the failings to protect Mr. Pelosi and to protect the Pelosi house. And there's growing calls on Capitol Hill for accountability and for millions more to be spent to try to keep lawmakers safe because of this, really dire threat environment.
Frank, I remember after 9/11, counterterrorism experts saying that it's a needle in a haystack. You're looking amid this climate of animosity for the one potential terror plot that is closest to coming to fruition. And I wonder what is the parallel here when the rhetoric and the destabilized individuals, or literally almost half the population, is taking in the disinformation. And it is coming at such a clip. And so you have to find among one of the two major political parties in America, the individuals consuming it, it's in the millions, but you have to find the ones that may act on it, who have been radicalized. How do you begin to do that?
So there's two issues here to getting toward a solution. First, of course, is getting much, much better at the vacuuming up of intelligence and making sense out of it. And yes, it is incredibly difficult. Millions and millions of messages a day, posts, communications, blogs, websites, tweets, all out there trying, and law enforcement desperately trying to discern aspirational from someone who's going to execute on their aspirations. Very difficult. And then layer in all the valid concerns about civil liberties and privacy and needing to get a search warrant to identify somebody that Facebook or somebody else has tipped off to you. So the intelligence side is difficult, challenging, need to work on it. But I have to tell you, there's another side to this, which is while all of that's going on, and yes, the lone offender threat is incredibly challenging to defend, you've got to at least do the easy stuff. Make the most obvious targets harder. And Nicole, I have to tell you, as I talk to more and more senior law enforcement officials in Washington about the Pelosi attack, they are absolutely livid at the Capitol Police over this. In other words, those who specialize for a living in executive protection are saying they have been trained, the executive protection details at Capitol Police. They know how to hold the house. That's the term used within Secret Service, for example. You hold the highest protectee's house because, of course, that becomes the soft target when they're not there. Of course, you monitor the cameras live of the Speaker of the House, the person second in line to the presidency. Of course you do that. So what they're calling for, people who talk to me are saying there's got to be accountability. As Luke alluded to, something is wrong here. The Capitol Police were on notice at the congressional baseball game when Steve Scalise got shot. They were on notice when Gabby Giffords, congresswoman from Arizona, got shot at a supermarket. It's not fixed. It's not fixed, and there does need to be accountability. Now, let's remember, the Capitol Police work for Congress. That's their boss. So there's got to be accountability there. And whether it's because certain members of Congress, I've seen this even in my own corporate security work, consulting, high-level people often don't like the kind of security you're telling them to do. Activate that alarm every time. Activate the motion sensor whenever you're going out or coming in. You're going to have a detail with you when you stop at the local pizza place for a slice. They don't like it, but that's too bad because we are protecting democracy by protecting our elected officials.
Miles, there's also no way of suggesting that the targeting of Pelosi was unknown to anybody. I mean, there's some great new reporting from my colleagues about Stuart Rhodes, who wrote a message to Trump after January 6th, calling on him to save the republic. Prosecutors on Wednesday played some recordings of Rhodes that Alpers captured, including audio of the Oath Keepers founder talking about civil war in the wake of the January 6th attack. Quote, "We should have brought rifles. We could have fixed it right then and there. I'd hang effing Pelosi from the lamppost," Rhodes said. So publicly and privately, the targeting of Nancy Pelosi with the most heinous kind of murder has been talked about by Trump's closest allies and participants in the January 6th insurrection.
Yeah, Nicole, I mean, to continue off of Frank's point, there's a good guy side of this equation and a bad guy side of this equation. And on the good guy side, clearly the good guys need to protect themselves better, and the Capitol Police and the U.S. Congress needs to think very seriously how to increase protection. But let's look at the bad guy side of the equation. We are seeing a surge in terror threats against public servants, unlike anything we've seen in the modern era. I'm willing to submit that the terrorist threat to public servants is greater now than it was in the immediate post 9/11 period, just in terms of volume. We've seen a tenfold increase to threats to U.S. members of Congress since the early years of the Trump administration. That's a massive spike, but it's not just at the federal level, which tells you that this is a nationwide problem, because 1 in 5 local officials say they feel threatened on the job. And not too long ago, we saw a poll that showed 1 in 3 election workers felt unsafe in their role. And in fact, Nicole, you know that I talk to candidates all the time that are out there this cycle. There are candidates for public office out there wearing Kevlar vests, wearing bulletproof vests on the campaign trail, and trying to disguise it under loose-fitting clothing because they are worried about being attacked. This is extremely serious, and we all know what's driving it. You noted at the top end of the program, it's conspiracy theories, just like we've seen drive other terrorist movements. In fact, one group of academics showed that the political stress index right now in the United States is at the highest levels it's been since the Civil War. So doing the same thing over and over that we've been doing to try to fix this problem is not going to work. And I think regardless of the results after the midterms, we're going to have to look long and hard, not just at public safety reforms to protect members of Congress, but also at major democracy reforms, things like ranked choice voting and open primaries, to try to get more moderate and less extreme public figures elected so we don't have people fanning the flames of this violent rhetoric.
I think we also have to, not that we don't do this here, all of us, but Ben Collins, I think, had a really powerful point at this hour yesterday when he said the difference is that when Steve Scalise was shot, that violence was condemned by everyone across the ideological spectrum. Now, when Paul Pelosi is attacked brutally to the point where he needed skull surgery, you've got the leader of the Republican Party peddling the conspiracies about it. You've got Marjorie Taylor Greene talking about activists in the media covering it up. I just want to play something that our friends at the Midas Group put together about all of the talk over the last 4 years about political violence out in the open from the most prominent figures on the right.
Now, which Republican official or candidate has ever condoned or in any way encouraged any type of violent assault? Can you start naming them? I can't.
I'd like to punch him in the face, I'll tell you. Knock the crap out of him.
Maybe he should have been roughed up. They never name names because they can't.
I want you to watch Nancy Pelosi yesterday. It'll be hard not to hit her with it, but I will back it down.
It's a crime punishable by death, is what treason is. Nancy Pelosi is guilty of treason, and we want her out.
They never name names because they can't.
That is a depiction of Representative Gosar carrying swords, attacking Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez.
They never name names.
Let's have trial by combat. Today is the day American patriots start taking down names and kicking ass. We will not go quietly into the night.
Striking fear in the hearts of liberals everywhere, folks.
Get on the phone, call your congressman. You can lightly threaten him. I'm coming after you. Madison Cawthorn's coming after you. Everybody's coming after you.
I don't think liberals thought this whole mask thing through. You better believe I'm coming with my Springfield XPS.
The swamp isn't truly drained until we've nailed the hides of the alligators to the wall.
Laura Ingraham is a lot of things. Stupid isn't one of them. They do it.
I'm going to weigh in on this, and then I'm going to let this go because of time, conscientious sake. This is what the movement started going back into the Reagan era, whenever they decided to make a conscious decision that they wasn't going to support the things that they talked about with other country members, that the world wasn't going to be destroyed by a nuclear holocaust, but it was going to be destroyed the way that the Bible described for it to be destroyed. But yet, no, wasn't nobody willing to support the person that had been given the crown or the anointing, the messenger. They didn't want to give me any type of leadway. They didn't want me to take center stage. They didn't want me to have any type of influence in the eyes of society. So I got shunned. I got ridiculed. I got made fun of. I got dehumanized in a humiliating way. I got demonized in a humiliating way. But the thing about it is, those humiliations did not just fall upon me. They fell upon my close immediate family. And that's probably one reason why that my two older brothers, my son, and yes, even my dad, done what they done. Because if they would have buddied up with me, then it would have been looked upon that they was in cahoots with me. And boy, would the neighborhood have ever taken a disliking to them, towards treating them, ostracizing them, basically them being an outcast. So rather than them being outcast, they was part of the outcasting, towards outcasting James Robert Jackson, his own son, Danny Robert Jackson, his own brother, and David Jeffrey Jackson, his own brother, until I come back. Once I come back, those same bridges that my brother had already burnt in entertainment by degrading his brother, now he had to eat. He had to accept the fact that I had come back, because I had convinced him that I would never step foot back off in Weakley County. And I was just going to let him do what he wanted to do, even though he was heading down the wrong trail towards doom and gloom, and eventually he would have probably wound up either being dead by some of the people that he was hanging around with around here, or we would have lost what little bit of farm that we had going all the way back to the mid-30s, in which we lost a great deal of it because of the swindlers up there in Dresden pertaining to the nursing home. But we for darn sure didn't need to lose this too. So I come back in defense, but whenever I come back in defense, in defending our name and defending our family legacy, my brother had done already burned a lot of bridges with a lot of people, and they was cornering him. I thought you felt this way about your brother. How come you ain't running him off? How come you ain't grabbed up a gun and done run him out of here? So he was having to live with that. Plus, he was having to live with him himself being attacked by various members of the community, because they was bringing just as much torment into his life as there was mine. And plus, my brother had to accept the fact that the so-called law enforcement in this area was just about as prejudiced and as biased as ever could, and they themselves was actually wanting something horrible to happen out here. That way one or the other or both parties would have wound up going to jail, and that would have been a way of getting rid of them forever and for good. And see, that's the reason why that they planted a trap towards stalking people across the road, in which I don't see how in the world that you can charge somebody for stalking unless you're out there with a tripod camera or you're out there with a gun. I don't see how that you can charge somebody for stalking that lives across your road. I think it's actually technically impossible, unless you was actually stalking them, unless you was actually had a tripod or a gun pointed at them every time that they pulled out of their driveway or in their driveway. Then I could say, well, you could probably get them for stalking. But other than that, I mean, you know good and well that I'm going to be able to see the things that they're involved in across the road out here in the middle of Timbuktu, with me and them just being the only two houses for probably 1,000 feet or better. And they're going to be able to see everything that's going on out here too as well. That ain't stalking. That's observation. You're not stalking your neighbor. You're having an observation of your neighbor. And really and truly, you have no other recourse other than to observe the things that's going on in your neighbor. Now, you can act like it, you don't see them. You can act like it, you don't hear them. And of course, that's what happened in this particular neighborhood. Well, I was always told, Miss Cheryl White told me, well, you're to mind your business and not to meddle in other people's affairs. And I asked her, I said, at the expense of watching children being destroyed? And then she come back, well, I wasn't going to say nothing to him. I wasn't going to get my head knocked off. That is about as sorry and as worthless of an excuse that an individual can come up with, because I guarantee you they could have remained anonymous. They could have picked up that telephone and they said, y'all need to come out here. There's an idiot out here screaming and hollering. He's out of control. 9 times out of 10 during the day and night, we know for a fact he's been beating up on his children, been beating up on his wife. He's just a total monster. That's the reason why they started calling him Grizzly, because of his grizzly type ways. So you don't think that them people are going to be held accountable? And God's going to ask Miss Cheryl and Ed White, how come y'all allowed for that stuff to go on? And you didn't intervene whenever there was little children involved being torn into little bitty shreds? And they wonder how come their own daughter basically abandoned them? Huh. You don't have to wonder too much longer. And I come back knowing that these people had these type of problems. And I still come back in love towards wanting to help these people. And you see what happened to my extended hand of gratitude. It basically got cut off at the elbow. We don't want your help. Just like whenever I raised a garden out here and started passing out corn, sweet corn to everybody. Everybody within a half-mile radius around here turned it down. We don't want your corn. Get out of my driveway. Get out of my face. We don't want your sweet corn. It was the best sweet corn you've ever tasted in your mouth. Now I took it to Brother Green, the Green family over in Tresvant, Tennessee, and gave them about 200 ears of corn. once I realized that I wasn't going to be able to give it to the people around here. It was either that or throw it off in the river and feed it to the fish. So I decided, you know what? I bet there's a family over there, Brother Green. It's got 3 daughters and a wife that's struggling. I guarantee you they'll love that corn to death. And sure enough, whenever I pulled in there, he thought it was a blessing from the Lord. And really and truly, I guess it was, because the Lord had watered it and made it grow the way that it did. I picked it and I gave it. And Brother Green was very, very grateful for it. And that's probably one reason why Brother Green loaned me his ladder. And I kept it, I guess, for about a month or so. And then his wife got a radical about the ladder. And that's whenever one thing led to another. And I take the ladder back, and the man wound up dead about a week later. Less than 10 days later, he was dead. Or less than 10 days later, he fell and broke his neck. And then about a month later, he was dead. Putting the time where it's supposed to be. But getting back to the security, this is the very bed that they wanted to make for themselves. All these people that didn't want the founder of the Windmill Ministries to have a voice, he was having to go in the back door versus going in the front, because my message wasn't welcome to come in the front. That's right. I got kicked out of this church over here at Greenfield. It looks so pretty today. It's a completely different set of people that goes to that church now. There may be 1 or 2 of them over there that's still living that remembers this. But I was told, quite frankly, to get the windmill out of the back end of my truck, that I was welcome, but my theology was not. And if I got the windmill out of my truck, as long as I kept my mouth shut and I was there to be sure to put in the plate every week and not to ask too many questions, and whatever you do, don't make no statements, I was welcome. In other words, I was welcome, but my message that God had given me to those people was not welcome. You don't think that those people that took a part in all that, you don't think they're going to give an account for the way that they mishandled me and treated me and wasn't willing to hear me out pertaining to my message? Sure they are. Sure they are. Just like Randy Brundridge, just like the Martin PD, just like people up here in Kentucky with Land Between the Lakes, just like Judge Woodall in Cadiz, Kentucky, just like Tommy Moore, just like Judge Pence, just like all these public defenders that didn't do their job properly, especially this one up here. Actually, I would have been better off to have had a public defender, because that was probably part of my problem. I hired a second-rate attorney because I thought that was the better way to go, because Tommy Moore, if I'm not mistaken, his daughter works as a public defender, which I think should be a conflict of interest, and I don't think that she should be allowed to work in the same county that her father's in, because once more, it's a conflict of interest there. But you try to persuade them of that, this family that's bedded down here in Weakley County. At least I will say this about Miss Fleming's in Cadiz, Kentucky. She couldn't practice. She couldn't practice in the same county that her husband was practicing in, because her husband was a juvenile judge, and they felt like because she was a public defender that it would be a conflict of interest, and she wasn't allowed to practice in the same county. You think that they've ever thought that through up here in Weakley County pertaining to Judge Tommy Moore having a daughter that works for the public defender office? It was my brother that convinced me, Juby, we cannot trust Tommy Moore with what's going on in your life pertaining with the Lester girl across the road. It would be best if we hired an attorney, because my brother David had already tried to go in front of Tommy Moore over a couple of families that tried to kill him out here on his own property, and he got thrown out of court. Plus, my brother knew the same thing that I knew, that it was basically a family clique up here, and we knew that the odds was going to be stacked against us towards ever getting any type of decent public defender in my case. So that's the reason why me and him both pursued getting an attorney. Just so happens he died, my brother died, before I ever got a chance of hiring the second attorney or re-advancing the first attorney on the level towards him defending me the way that he was supposed to have defended me in going from a county charge to a state charge. In a way, it kind of sounds complicated, but in another way, it ain't complicated at all if you get to looking at the facts. If you get to looking at the facts towards how that these people, Tommy Moore himself said, sitting on his own stage, that I couldn't tell you the like of people that has come to me and said, Juby, they thought that you was trying to produce some sort of manifesto. Oh, really? A manifesto? Kind of like the shoe bomber? Airplane bomber? Once more, these people wanted to associate me in a light of monsterism. They didn't want to believe that I had been set up by Secret Service. They didn't want to believe that all these things that was going on in my life, that was intentionally attacks coming from the devil. I couldn't tell you the amount of people that would come to me around here and say, well, you brought it upon yourself. You done this, you done that. Really? I deserve that? Really? I deserve to be locked up and charged for stalking, even though it was my brother and I that was concerned about 3 little children that made a telephone call to the abuse center in Nashville and the abuse center in Weakley County that was concerned about these children across the road? Really? Every time that there was an incident, it always happened at 291 Thompson Road, even though there was people that come from miles around that wound up right here at 291 Thompson Road. I brought it upon myself. Good luck to all of us. These intolerable situations that now the American people are having to deal with. It's not just me dealing with the problems that I had to deal with. Now it's across the board, and it's come back to haunt them. And as I've said before, and I'll say again, it couldn't have happened to a better group of people.
They do it out in the open. It is the hallmark of the modern Republican Party to do these things in public, to attack our democracy in public, to invoke threats of violence and celebrate acts of violence in public, to refuse to accept the results of democratic, free and fair elections in public. Luke, it is notable that Liz Cheney is endorsing more Democratic candidates, 6 days out from the election. But it's equally notable that Adam Kinzinger, her fellow Republican on the 1-6 committee, says we're not brave. We're just surrounded. We're in a sea of cowards. What is sort of the state of, what has it manifest itself up there that these two are the only Republicans out there backing candidates based on their commitment to democracy?
Yeah, in an earlier era, an attack on the speaker's husband, where he was put in the ICU with a cracked skull, would have been a time for people to come together, maybe lower the rhetoric, express, prayers and sympathies. In this era, what has been the response from the Republican leaders? You've either had people saying it's unfair to blame us for this and come out and defend what they've been saying about Nancy Pelosi and defending the rhetoric of the Republican Party, or much worse, either mocking it, laughing at the attack as we've seen, or doubling down and increasing the conspiracy theories, the very things that would lead to such an attack, right? And you have President Trump, bringing out a new conspiracy theory to the public that there was a break-in from the inside out.
Now, I want to say this. Just because I said it couldn't have happened to a better group of people does not mean that I wanted it to happen to them. I would have loved to have been embraced like any other formal minister, let's say Billy Graham, to where people wanted to hear what I had to say pertaining to the message coming out of the Bible. I would have loved to have loved these people the way that I was supposed to have loved them according to the Bible. And I still love their soul. I don't wish for none of them to go to hell. But at the same time, I can honestly stand in the corner now and say, you know what? Nanny, nanny, boo-boo. You brought it upon yourself. You have no one to blame but yourself. I realize that you would love to blame me or love to blame any and everybody else other than yourself, but you have no one to blame other than yourselves. I never wanted any type of hardship to fall upon anybody's life. And that's the whole thing. I was being judged and condemned over the subject matter in which what I was teaching and preaching pertaining to the end time events coming from the book of Revelations. Like I was just as monstrous as the monsters that it talks about that's going to be coming out of the judgment seat of God pertaining to the Antichrist, the false prophet, the mark of the beast, the whole 9 yards. A matter of fact, Tommy Moore himself said, well, Juby, they believe that you're of a dark horse instead of a light horse. But yet, no, you can analyze all my material. I know I've made mistakes, and I still make them to this day. I'm not perfect. Far from it. I'm a sinner saved by grace. But you can look at all of my material from A to B, from the time that I first stepped foot in the eyes of the public, towards going from church to church, from car to car, from person to person, and every bit of my material surrounds the Lord Jesus Christ. So they have no excuse around here. They have no excuse in Western Kentucky. They have no excuse in Oklahoma City, Oklahoma, pertaining to what that they have tried to do and been unsuccessful in doing it. That's the reason why I praise God every day. That's the reason why I support the Lord Jesus Christ. And I'm going to continue to speak well in his behalf, regardless of what may fall upon to the Homo sapiens upon to the planet.
So it's exactly the opposite of the responsible response, which would be to lower temperature to try to bring the country together. And it's a response that's saying, what matters is that we can never be wrong. The other party is evil. The other party is the enemy. And we should stop at nothing to destroy them. And if that means violence, so be it. And sadly, that's the message that we've seen coming from a lot of the right, and especially some people, some of the highest ranking people on the right. You know, I think I said yesterday, it's not funny. It's not something for conspiracy theories. And it's deadly serious. And, you know, I don't know where we're going as a country if the leadership of the Republican Party won't condemn violence and will embrace it.
You know, and Frank, if you think about what it's like for people to go to work every day at the Capitol.
Why should they condemn it? They was the ones that caused it. They was the ones that retaliated against supporting the very message coming from the messenger. But yet now they spoke with a double tongue towards telling the Russians, telling the Chinese, telling all these other countrymen, now the world ain't going to come to an end by nuclear holocaust. It's going to happen the way that the Bible talks about it happening. There's going to be the false prophet and the Antichrist, and they're going to be talking about the New World Order and the mark of the beast and all this other stuff. What a bunch of hypocrites. You say one thing out of one side of your mouth, but in reality, you didn't support the very person that those remarkable anointings happen to? What a bunch of hypocrites that says one thing, but does just the opposite. So now it's reached a point that they realize that they didn't succeed in destroying me. I still got the same message, and now they have become so old and ragged and feeble that now they basically have 1 foot in the grave and 1 foot out. And rather than dying standing up for a cause, now they're going to die a slow, agonizing death that they wished would come up onto me because they wasn't going to support me. We was going to put this guy out on the limb. No way was we going to support this guy. But yet, no, they tell all their predecessors, they tell all their countrymen, they still preach on the Antichrist and the mark of the beast. All these different ministers and all these different evangelists, they're still preaching on the opening of the seals, but no one is willing to support the very messenger that come up with the message, because he was inspired by God of bringing forth the message. And in reality, it's not my message. It's God's message. I'm just a messenger to the message. I'm not adding to or taking from. I'm just the messenger putting out the message about the message. And it's up to them to support it. Obviously, they didn't want to support it, so that's the reason why total hell was busted loose in their lives. And if the truth be known, probably a lot of these people that are acting the way that they're acting, they're probably acting in the form of being a true patriot, because they know that something has entirely went wrong in their own country. And maybe they themselves has been roughed up. Maybe them themselves has been hurt by various government officials because they've been handed a hard hand. And really and truly, the people that have made successes out of themselves, that basically abandoned the younger generation, that now the younger generation don't have a future, they're the ones that should be held accountable. Not the younger generation, not those that's acting out, but those that has caused this environment for the people to act out. They're still looking at this from a perspective that everybody's terrorists. Everybody is a homegrown terrorist that disagrees with us, or that acts out in some sort of way. That's their ideology of the people that's against them. I've never been violent towards any of them. I've never talked about being violent, as far as me personally, towards getting harmful or hurtful with anybody. But yet, no, they still got me pegged as me being a radicalist. Why? Never showed any type of violence. I think I got in a fist fight once or twice growing up in school. Had the shit beat out of me all the time by my father. Never beat up nobody. Never raped nobody. Never physically hurt nobody. Never robbed nobody. But yet, no, they got me marked as me being an radicalist. You see, a guy told me one time pertaining to the military wants people just a little bit crazy to the point that they're willing to get out on the front lines and sacrifice their lives if necessary. But at the same time, the United States military don't want somebody too radical, because if they're too radical, that means that they can't control them even during the time that they're in the trenches. So they're looking for this happy medium, you know. Because I've never been violent towards killing nobody, I can't go around bragging, oh, I'm a bad this, I'm a bad that. You know, like some of these people in prison, they want to put a teardrop or two on their eye, and most of them had never killed nobody, but they want people to think that they have. That way they got bragging rights. Oh, he's bad, he killed somebody. Had never hurt nobody in his entire life, other than maybe defending himself. And if truth be known, the reason why he put that little dot underneath his eye was because he was somebody's you know what while he was in jail. Deceit. Deceitful. Just like Donald Trump said, the swamp needs draining, and I guarantee you, just like the Walmart slogan, coming near a neighborhood near you, the swamp will be drained, and if it don't get drained one way, it will get drained in another. And as I've said before, you can want in one hand and poo-poo in the other. And I guarantee you, every time the hand that you're poo-pooing in versus the hand that you're wanting in will fill up a whole lot quicker than the hand that you're wanting. You can want all day long, but you're not going to be able to go up against the powers that be. And I'm still here talking. And yes, I still love the people, even in this area. I don't have to love what they have done, or I don't have to love what they didn't do that they should have done. But I still love their eternal souls, even though they may not want to listen or abide by any word that I may give. In the meantime, I sit and watch the destruction of our rivers, our parks. I see the destruction of people's lives. I see all this other stuff that's just coming in leaps and bounds pertaining to the violence that they're discussing right now, and they have no one to blame but themselves. And as I have said before, I'll say again, it couldn't have happened to a better group of people, especially those that are playing like that they're sold out to God, go to church, and ain't a bit more saved than a dog outside roaming down the road somewhere.
The Capitol, the members, their staff, the reporters. The only category that we're even talking about hardening are the members themselves. I mean, to the degree that the Capitol complex descends into this sort of fever swamp of conspiracies, and I am careful not to amplify.
And now it's been like a cancer. We've seen all these other countries that's basically doing the exact same thing. You know, see no evil, do no evil. But whenever you're the leader of the pack and they see how people over here responded and are reacting, now all these other countries are doing the same. I think, if I'm not mistaken, I heard this morning where Iran was possibly threatening some country over there, and there was U.S. fighters over in Saudi Arabia that was possibly on their way of engaging into this situation. You see the population of Iran with all the citizens standing up right now in protest pertaining to their regime over there. You see all these other problems in all these other countries. You can look at Russia with the Ukrainians. You can also look at some of the problems going on pertaining to bird flu now that's coming into play. And there's been other diseases now that's basically gonna take center stage this winter, because that's the time that she comes around. For just like the Bible said, he will throw us off into a sick bed. We was sick before COVID ever hit. It just so happens now we can see it. Now we can see our sicknesses. And it ain't just one sickness. It's not just a physical sickness. It's a spiritual sickness. It's a mental sickness. It's a social sickness. It's a structural sickness. And those are the things that they're talking about right now. But they're not digging deep enough in identifying what has caused it. And I guarantee you, it began with the Republican Party.
Marjorie Taylor Greene, but it's very likely that she could be at the beginning of her political sort of power plays in the Republican caucus. So I am going to share this. She tweeted this. The same mainstream media Democrat activists that sold conspiracies for years about President Trump and Russia are now blaming Elon Musk for internet misinformation about Paul Pelosi's friend attacking him with a hammer. The media is a source of misinformation. This is from the San Francisco DA's filing of what happened on the 911 call, which is, as far as I can tell from reading the filings and the reporting, perhaps the difference between Paul Pelosi surviving with simply surgery to repair a skull fracture and something much worse happening that night. This from the filing. When the dispatcher told Mr. Pelosi to call back if he changed his mind, Mr. Pelosi quickly responded, no, this gentleman just came into the house and he wants to wait for my wife to come home. The dispatcher then asked Mr. Pelosi if he knew the person, and Mr. Pelosi said he did not. Mr. Pelosi then said that the man was telling him not to do anything. The dispatcher then asked Mr. Pelosi for his name and address, and Mr. Pelosi gave the dispatcher both. Mr. Pelosi then said that the man told him to put the phone down and do what he says. The dispatcher then asked for the man's name, and the man responded, "My name is David." When the dispatcher asked who David is, Mr. Pelosi said, "I don't know." But David said, "I'm a friend of theirs." Mr. Pelosi then confirmed with the dispatcher that he did not know the man. When the dispatcher offered to stay on the line with Mr. Pelosi to make sure everything is okay, Mr. Pelosi said, "No, he wants me to get the hell off the phone." The call ended. Based on her training and what she heard, the dispatcher Heather Grives, issued an A priority well-being check.
Now see, If this individual was that mentally deranged, or if he had the intent of going in there busting people up towards breaking kneecaps, do you think that all this would have happened? That's what I'm saying. I think he's using that as a front. And if the truth be known, he's actually seeking some sort of publicity. Like I said, whenever these people's names and their faces get on national news, that opens up a brand new avenue towards them. Just about everybody that's ever been on the national news or works for the White House or works for the media winds up writing a book. Winds up writing a book and getting it published. Now, I don't know how well the sales are, but you know, books turn into movies. Or even some books is turned into plays, and then the plays is turned into movies, vice versa. But if he was really that dead set on really being this bad of a guy that really wanted to seek out this type of violence, he never would have let Mr. Pelosi ever get on the phone to begin with. And once he did get on the phone, he'd have knocked him plumb out. It don't add up towards this guy being as vicious as what they're claiming that he is, towards breaking kneecaps and kidnapping and all the above. It don't add up. It don't add up.
Pelosi probably making split-second decisions that dramatically altered what happened that night. But this conspiracy stuff on the right that he knew, it's coming from the attacker. And to Luke's point, we're now at a point not only where no one offers prayers, they believe the assailant. We're now at and the parallel would be, imagine if anyone on the left had believed Mr. Scalise's assailant. Nobody did that. There is a problem. The country is.
Y'all are the ones that's believing the assailant. I'm the one that's speaking up about the things the assailant. I guess you're calling the assailant. That's a new word for me. The person that's victimizing the victim. You're the one that's ate all this stuff up hook, line, and sinker. I'm the one that's actually telling the truth about what I see, that there was more to his motives other than being a vicious human being. If he was that vicious, he would have never would have let Mr. Pelosi ever picked up the phone to begin with, much less have the conversation that he had.
Country is broken. Our politics are broken on one side, on the Republican side.
I think it's broken on both sides. Both.
Yesterday, Nicole, about how this is a strategy, how the swiftness of the response to the Pelosi attack, the immediacy across the far right of not only saying this didn't happen this way, but laughing at it, being encouraging and supportive of this kind of violence. That's not happenstance. That's not just a meanness or lack of compassion. This is what they've got left to do. It's all they've got left. And let's make no doubt about it. They understand. These are not stupid people. They understand. There was a police department investigation, a federal investigation. There are federal charges that had to be sworn out in an affidavit, right? There's a U.S. attorney, there's a district attorney, there's a dispatcher. All of this, the guy confessed, and they know it, but it makes them look bad. So they're duping their followers. And what we're going to quickly hear, because we've heard it already, hey, the clip, the compilation you just played from Midas, right? Laura Ingraham's response to that likely would be, hey, that's all, what I say, that's free speech. These people you just played, that's free speech. That's not criminally actionable violent threat. You're infringing on free speech. And it's not free speech without responsibility attached to it. So we're being duped into thinking, yeah, you're right. I guess you do have the right to say whatever you want, even if people are getting killed. That's where we are right now. We've become numb to.
We've become numb because of the swindlers. And now, because it's become so numb, it's become dangerous. And the reason why it's become so dangerous is because we don't believe none of you. You have all lost your credibility as far as telling us the truth, because we can see where this has all gone in the past 30 plus years, and now the people are lashing out on account of it. Like I said, probably 85% are whack jobs. 85% needs to go to jail. 85% has wrong intentions or motives. But there are a certain percentage of people out there that love their land, love their country, and they can see where all this has gone to. And because of it, they're lashing out. Now, are they lashing out in the right ways? No. You shouldn't have to lash out in a violent way. But once more, if the people that is the swindlers, if they have taken the country for a ride, which obviously they have, sometimes fumigating a coup may be the only way of cleaning the swamp. Because you don't hear nobody coming clean with the bushes towards saying, yes, this man is right. There was 9 tapes that went to the White House. Yes, the church communities around here didn't want to support this, so we capped it off, and we tried to make this individual's life so miserable that we was hoping that eventually he would go away. But in the meantime, they was spewing out all this stuff about the Antichrist, the opening of the seals, the 4 horsemen, the mark of the beast, the New World Order. They was spewing it out of one side of their mouth, but the other side wasn't acting upon it. That is what has put us where we are today, towards a unsettling society that is basically on the fringes of an uprising, a bloody uprising, which once more helps to verify what I had predicted towards a bloody road ahead. Not that I'm going to commit the bloodshed, but that the others are. People are getting antsy. People getting nervous. People's financial gains has been strained. They're paying more for gas. They're paying more for food. How do you expect the public to react, sir? How do you expect the public to react?
To violent, radical.
Our government has failed its people. And this is the repercussions and the consequences for failing its people.
Radicalization that's being incited, and then we're becoming duped into thinking, oh, I guess that's free speech. It's not.
Miles, I'll give you the last word. I think you are the friend of the show that has been warning about political violence the longest and the loudest. And here we are. This is what we're covering now.
Nicole, you have been shining the light on this for a long time, and you know what?
2005, Nashville, Tennessee, sent a T-shirt to the president that obviously was misinterpreted by Homeland Security after them coming to my house and coming to my workplace that said a bloody road ahead. And since then, I have seen homicides, suicides, knockdown drag-outs that has gotten worser and worser and worser. And it's almost like walking up a stair step. You know what I'm saying? Once you walk to this step, then you go to the next step. Then you go to the next level. Then you go to the next level. There you go. That's where we're heading.
People mock us and have been. We're like the Chicken Littles of cable news. Is okay, the sky is falling. The sky is falling. Since January 6th, we've been talking about this. And since that attack, we've had assassination plots, again, against senators, governors, congressmen, cabinet officials, local leaders, candidates for public office. And now we have, an assassination attempt in Pelosi's home that almost, thank God it wasn't successful. I worry that that's not enough. In fact, it's clear it's not enough to draw attention to it. And some people have said, it's going to take a high-profile assassination, unfortunately, to wake the country up. I'm even more worried, Nicole, that will not do it, because the other side has so brainwashed the country that if something like that happened, they would rationalize it and say, it's just one disturbed person. No, it is not. These are huge trend lines. And once again, I got mocked on this show probably a year ago for saying that the biggest public safety threat I have seen in my lifetime is the MAGA Republican Party. I will say it again. The MAGA Republican Party is fueling this and creating the biggest terror threat domestically we have seen in this country. It is the biggest national security threat to the United States, and really the only tool voters have right now to keep it in check is to fire these people.
And how many times have I said that the enemy from within would love to see us going back to the same frame of mind as a civil war? That way, once we started killing each other and we started dropping like flies and we become so weak and discontented with each other that the enemy would basically just walk over here and take us over. They would lower our American flag and hang whatever flag that they wanted to on that pole, and they would tell us, now this is the way the cow's going to eat the cabbage. You belong to us. You will be our slaves. You will work for us. And if you don't, we will kill you. That's what we're facing. We're facing the destruction of not only our democracy that they keep talking about, but what's going to happen after that. A bloodbath, turmoil, and then the true adversary, regardless whether it be people in the Middle East, regardless whether it be Russia, regardless whether it be China, regardless whether it be Mexico or whoever, will just walk over here and politely take over and say, now this is the way that the cow's going to eat the cabbage. We're going to take reverence to this particular Constitution. We're going to raise this flag in honor of that Constitution. And if anybody objects to this, you will die. That's what happens whenever a country gets taken over by a tyranny type group of people. That's where we're heading. Just continue on the path that you're on with all the squabbling, all the fighting, all the violence. And once that occurs, you know what the majority of the politicians in this country is going to do, and the wealthy people is going to do, those that can afford it, they'll get on their private little airplanes. Donald Trump will take off. He's probably already got a place somewhere in mind. They'll get out of all the chaos. In the meantime, they'll watch it on some other national TV network in another country. May have to have a translator, I don't know. But they'll watch this country bleed out while these politicians has abandoned us. Coming near a neighborhood near you.
You have to fire the extremists. And I'm worried that that's not what we will see in these midterm elections.
Just a remarkable, remarkable moment in our country's story. I'm so grateful to all of you. Luke Broadwater, Frank Figliuzzi, Miles Taylor, thank you so much for starting us off today. Frank will be back in the next hour. When we come back, running to defeat the hate and the lies, our next guest was thrust into the national spotlight.
And I'm pretty sure she'll be able to write a book about it.
Off today.
Somebody will like the book.
In the next hour, when we come back.
And the next thing you know, after the book, come a movie, and the next thing you know, all these royalties will come in, and that same person that shared the spotlight now is worth 20, 30, 40, 50, maybe 150, maybe $300 or $400 million. Some of these people make big money off of the entertainment world. Big money. And if you don't believe me, look at some of them up and what their value is. Oprah, look at what she's worth. Other political figures or TV figures or Hollywood movie stars or entertainers. Look them up. Look how much money that they're worth. Whenever they have these concerts and stuff, they make a lot of money off of that stuff. Cops make a lot of money. Security makes a lot of money. The setup crew makes a lot of money. The people renting out the Coliseum makes a lot of money. The vendors make a lot of money. And the people that's running the show makes a lot of money. Good luck to all of us. God bless America. That's all I can say. We're living in uncertain, sad times. Shalom. May heaven help us all.